There are 320 million Americans to feed, and there are only 1.8 million farms and ranches left. We have 4 beef companies that control 85% of the meat supply in our country. And they operate 80% of our beef processed in their 30 massive slaughterhouses. We're talking 6,000 head a day and up. When you shut one of those down, you are causing a significant disruption in our food supply chain. In 2021, JBS was hacked. We are in a position in our nation that, I told people this before the election, no matter who wins, we still might see famine.
AJ Richards comes from 5 generations of farmers and ranchers. He is the co-founder of From the Farm, and he is on a mission to feed the people by the people. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in St. George, Utah. I was born here in Sandy and then moved to Utah. I was young enough, didn't remember living here. All my family are from Southern Utah, except for my dad's side that's up here. So I grew up in St. George, lived there my entire life. I didn't leave St. George till I joined the Army National Guard here in Utah. And then basic training sent me away and got into the whole melding pot of basic training, which was a learning experience for sure.
But yeah, that's interesting. So what was life for you like in St. George, Utah? You grew up there.
Yep.
When did you move out?
We left after I got home from Iraq. I ended up in Phoenix, Arizona. I was probably 23 or 24. Okay. So
were
St.
you
George
ranch hands in St. George? Did you live on a ranch? Your cousin, family?
Yeah, family all ranchers. They're actually the Bundy ranchers. So if you go do a Google, you'll find them super easy. They stood up against some corrupt government issues twice that had major national media attention. And so...
Any relation to Ted Bundy?
No, different Bundy.
Okay, good.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, different Bundys. But it was amazing. I mean, growing up was so special because I remember being 8, 9, 10. Grandma was on the other side of the hill. I mean, it was a 5-mile walk. And I wanted to go to grandma's, and my mom's like, okay, have fun. So we just walked to grandma's 5 miles away through town. I would never let my kids do that now. Right. Now, where we've moved, I'm glad to be there because Cody, Wyoming is kind of like what I had growing up. But all my friends were my family. We have a huge family. Our last reunion, there's like 1,100 people. We have a big clan. And so I kind of, blessing and curse, I didn't need a lot of external friends because my cousins were my friends and still are, right? We're pretty close. So it was great. I mean, I feel blessed to have grown up in a family of that size. I feel extremely blessed to have grown up connected to agriculture. I always joke I'm the city slicker cousin. I don't want anybody out there to think that I know everything about ranching because I don't. But I grew up and had enough experience doing branding and doing cattle drives to be connected to it. And then later on, as I got older, to hear the challenges that were facing them constantly. That's one thing about agriculture is that the stories around the dinner table or the family gatherings was always about these regulations reducing our effectiveness, policies, regulations, just, weather. I mean, everything affects a rancher. And so it was interesting to kind of grow up around that. And then
what would you say are some values that you've held on to on top of family value, community, the ones that you can kind of suss out just naturally? What would you say are some values that you got from the farming side, the rancher side of your family?
Hard work, and that there's always a way. I mean, producers have to be independent because if they weren't, they wouldn't. It's already hard enough to make a living, but if you don't know how to figure things out on your own, you're not getting anywhere because there's a lot you have to figure out on your own. So being adaptive is something I held on to the most. I have this saying in my own head, just flow, the flow like water. Water's going to go down. If it crashes on a rock, it's just going to roll right around it and keep going. That same drop of water didn't stop there. It just moved with the rest of the water droplets and just kept going. So as we're moving forward with our company, if we run up against a rock, you just roll off of it. We weren't supposed to be there. Where else are we going? So being adaptive was really, really valuable to learn. I remember one time we were going out to the ranch with one of my uncles and he hit a bump and his bumper fell off. And I expected him to say, my bumper broke. It's not what he said. He said, crap, my baling wire broke. So
My
the
baling
last time
wire.
it broke, he just wired it back on and kept
That-
going.
That's
So
amazing.
just
Yeah.
that stuck with me. It's like, okay, you got something broke, fix it. You know, bubble gum and duct tape or whatever that takes. So the adaptive side of growing up in that community, certainly my connection to God, to our Creator. You know, my personal beliefs differ probably quite a bit from most of my family, but I've never denied my God being in charge of what I'm up to. Right. I haven't always been as close. God and I have wrestled a lot, or I mean, let's be honest. I've been wrestling, and he's over there like, "Yo, what are you doing?"
Right.
Just trying to help you. So, my faith has been a big part of my upbringing. But I think you said it. Family to me is the most important. That was a hard lesson to come by. If my previous business had been successful, I probably wouldn't be married. And I'm most proud of any accomplishment I have in my life. I'm proud that I'm still married to my wife after 21 years.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah, and in a country where divorce is over 50%, what else would I be more proud of? I mean, we're winning the lottery right now. So,
So, generally when I'm asking what values you get, we usually you'll have a more positive outlook, right?
Yeah.
All positive values. What are some of the not so positive values that you think you've gotten from that side of your family?
scarcity over abundance, because all of those arguments over and over and over again, it tells you the world doesn't have enough, or you can't. There's not enough for you. So overcoming scarcity would be one that definitely is part of that. You know, epigenetics, studying epigenetics and understanding the impact that has on us has been very key for me. What I've learned is anytime I'm struggling with something, if I can learn from a mentor how to describe that or put a label to it, all of a sudden I can give it a name, and I have something I can associate to. I can grasp onto it. Like, so learning about epigenetics and what that means, I was like, oh, that opened up this whole world of why I'm seeing things the way they are, or why I'm stressed out or whatever. So I can actually do something with that, you
Yeah.
know? So yeah, I would definitely say of all of it, the most negative is scarcity through, you know, what I would say epigenetics.
Where do you think that scarcity mind comes from?
Again, it's those decisions being made by somebody else that has you sit here and say, I can't do it. What am I supposed to do? Right. And so I think it's one of the things I teach or try to share. I try not to sound like I'm teaching, but just to share, and then people can take it or not with our producers. There are 320 million Americans to feed. There's plenty. And there are only 1.8 million farms and ranches left. I don't need to promote my beef is better than my neighbor. I just need to promote my beef.
Yeah.
And promoting my beef as mine is better than yours comes from a scarcity mindset, right? Because if I have to put somebody else down to lift me up, it's because I have fear. And so we don't need to do that. We just need to talk about us as individuals, me personally. Like if I'm a rancher, I'm just going to talk about me and my family and what our practices are. And that's why we think our beef is great. Not better, but great. Yeah. And I don't think you're going to lose customers because you don't put down the neighbor. I think you're going to gain customers because you are being authentic and true to who you are and not coming from a place of scarcity.
Is there a competitive spirit amongst ranchers and farmers?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's scarcity. So they have to be competitive, because if you win that bid in the auction, I didn't, right? Wow. I know ranchers that will bid just to bid because they like it. It's almost like gambling, right? And there's that rush, and they want to win. And in negotiating too, a lot of producers love the art of negotiating because they like to feel like they won when they walked away. And I'm like, my mindset is, how do we both win? I don't need to beat you to be successful, but how do we both succeed? So trying to teach abundance over the scarcity mindset and share that through example is, you know, what we're doing. Like our platform that we're building now, I'm one of 10 that I know of. I'm so glad they're out there because I'm coming from a place of abundance. We have 320 million people to connect with. Your message is going to connect different than my message. Go do it, because if you're out there promoting direct beef and I'm promoting direct beef, the common conversation or any food is to buy local. We're helping everybody. Rising tides raise all boats, right? So that's kind of how I approach all of that.
And you keep alluding to what you're doing now, right? From the farm.
Yeah,
right?
from the farm.
What's some of your fondest? Do you have like a fondest memory of growing up in St. George's? Is there something that sticks out more than?
I mean, immediately my mind went to our family reunions. I mean, it's a party. You got 1,100 people and you're all related. I mean, it's awesome. And when I say party, our partying is different. There's no alcohol there. You might have a couple of camps that have some alcohol, but skeet shooting, horseshoes, foot races, three-legged foot races, sack races, old school entertainment that used to be done in the country, and so I have so many. When you said that, I'm just like thinking of all the different reunions with all the different things we did. We have ice caves up there that you literally crawl in your stomach and pull yourself through these underground caves full of ice in the middle of the Arizona desert. It's just it was a special place to be. Our family settled that area in 1916. It was the last. It's some of the last homesteading available in the lower 48 that was available. So our family went out there with horse-drawn wagons and staked their claim, and so it's been called Bundyville. It's on the Arizona Strip. It was just such a, I'm very blessed to have grown up with the family I did.
I'm imagining that everything that you've done in life has really it started to incubate at that stage. Because what you then got into sports and entertainment, and a lot of it still has to do with community, and you're very focused on family and community, and then that naturally has it's like you're expanding your circle of like what you care about. Where does that come from?
My kids, for sure. The biggest thing that put me on the journey I'm on now is concern for my kids' future. And so, when I went to Iraq, there was a day we had a bunch of care packages sent out from family that we could take into to some people there. We wanted to serve the civilian population. So we went to this compound. It was a family compound, and we were handing out boxes and toys and stuff, food and toys and things like that. And it was very desolate, all desert. And so, I was 23 at the time. So it's interesting. You get older and you look back on those memories and they mean something different. And so here I am. It's 2020. COVID's taken off, and we sell beef direct. And I call to get our next round of slaughter for processing, and they're like, "We can get you in 18 months." And I was like, "Say that again?"
Yeah.
A year and a half? Because prior to that, it was, "Yeah, we got you next week." And so I'm like, "What is going on?" And because of supply chain issues, our supply chain was crumbling. And now I'm sitting here at night, and then I had this vision for what we're doing, and I'm like, yeah, somebody should do that. I don't know nothing, right? I just went through a bankruptcy from that sports entertainment company. I'm slinging concrete, working Walmart distribution at night, listening to, all these great podcasts of leaders talking about, how to be successful. And so that's what I'm hearing in my head all the time while I just went through a bankruptcy and feeling like, my life's purpose is over, because I thought the previous one was what I was up to. Yeah. And so then I had this idea, and I'm like, well, I don't know anything about technology, so not me. And tried to pawn it off. But then when I'd lay my head down at night to sleep, I was seeing myself back in Iraq, but I was the dad watching us feed his kids. And I couldn't sleep for weeks. And finally, I'm like, okay, God, clearly you're not going to let me let this go. So what do I got to do? So it comes from first taking care of my own, and then recognizing that I always tell people this: if you're prepared and your neighbors are not, you're not prepared.
Right.
Your community needs to be able to stand. If you're hoarding a bunch of food in your basement and you've got neighbors close by and something happens, and they're going to find it. So you got to go beyond yourself. You have to build strength in your community. And so that goes beyond my family. And so then it's like, okay, what about the other families? What about the other kids that are suffering and being poisoned because they don't know about the food, or may not have it because of our supply chain being broken?
Yeah.
How do we serve these people that are our people, our community, so that we don't have to worry about that?
That topic, every time I think about that situation during COVID, man, it was a time for me personally. I've never shared this story in the podcast, but interestingly enough, this is how I actually met Jordan. He was a health coach. I had stepped in as CEO for a health coaching company. Okay. It was like a small group of us, and we were teaching people basic nutrition and movement, and it was very purposeful. But when everything shut down, we were kind of conflicted, the leaders. I stepped in as CEO, and I was like, we have to start figuring out remote coaching and different things until we figure out what's going on. Me and the other founder didn't see eye to eye for a minute, and then eventually we didn't really have a choice at that point, right?
Yeah.
And then we ended up dissolving that partnership, and I was sitting in that kind of space that I think every man, every husband, anyone that's leading their family is like, and I don't think I'm speaking for myself, but I can only speak to what I was feeling.
Mhm.
It was like, what is the point of all of this? And you're looking at everything. If you are not looking at food supply and the toilet paper crisis was taking place, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
I'm just seeing what you're doing now, and the deepness of the roots of this purpose is just, it's inflating my spirit, right? I'm just like, this is it. We need this.
Yeah.
This isn't a nice to have.
Yeah. Right.
This is a necessity.
We moved to Cody, Wyoming in 2022, beginning of the year. So we moved to Cody, Wyoming, and we got 7.5 acres with a live creek running right through the middle. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you, the moment I drove my family into Cody, the amount of weight that came off my shoulders, I just can't describe it. It was necessary because the work we're doing is so complicated and sometimes, scary, I guess.
Yep.
That I need as much of my energy focused here. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was get my family into a safe place so I don't have to worry about them. Yep. And then I can shift all of that energy towards my singular purpose. Mm-hmm. And so that's what a homestead did for us. Yep. We've got 60 chickens now. We had 11 goats for a while. We were milking them, and it was so awesome to see my wife and kids who didn't grow up around ag milking a goat. I mean, yeah. And my wife's become the most incredible trad wife. I don't know if you heard that term.
Yep.
Dude, I'm like, this is, there was a time where the trophy wife was whatever that term means for you, but this is a trophy wife.
Yeah.
I mean, she grinds the grain from berries down to bread. My kid had celiac forever. Now she can eat kamut bread. So my wife makes all this homemade bread. My kid's guts healed.
What about einkorn wheat?
Einkorn is where we're going next. We got a grower next to us that's restoring all ancient grains.
Yes.
That is doing that.
Dude, that's powerful.
I mean, if people understood the healing power of food, we wouldn't need pharma, which is part of the issue. But yeah, the amount of weight that just left me where I could be like, okay, now I can focus. Mm-hmm. It was unbelievable. And I knew that was there, but to feel it and be like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
My kids are good. Now let's go to work. Yeah. It was so awesome.
That's exactly what I thought was going to happen. Like if I did that, I was like, dude, so you're a living example.
Keep looking because it makes a difference.
No, I feel like I'm so off that path, but my fiance, she's been making sourdough bread. She has sourdough starter. She's moved over. She was also an entrepreneur.
Okay.
Very successful in her own right. And she has naturally just now more akin to like a trad wife is what it's called. Now all her posts on social media are like, okay, this is what we're cooking up today.
So awesome. Yeah.
It's like our organic beef. Here's our pot roast.
Yep.
Like it's powerful. Right?
Yeah.
And it's better too when it happens naturally and somebody's not forced. Like she's very rebellious, very self-directed, and you know what I mean? And if I'm like, you have to do this, then there's always going to be resent. But she's kind of naturally found that like, this is what I want to do. I love this, So yeah, I think that's the next step for us is buying property. What part of Utah would you actually recommend? Do you know a lot about Utah?
Yeah, I'm from St. George, right? So I'm pretty familiar.
We have a lot of friends going to
out by
went to Vernal.
Richfield. Yep. Yeah. Vernal's great. Vernal gets real cold. So your growing season isn't awesome for produce. I mean, you can do walapinis or greenhouses or something to do. Like that's what we're going to do because we're in Cody. You don't have any room to talk. We get -30 for weeks at a time. Yeah. But over by Richfield, up along that valley over there on the other side of I-15, like, listen, man, I'm a in my own head, I'm a pretty overly prepared kind of guy. So I'm like as far off major highways as possible. Mm-hmm. You find a place in Utah like that. But most importantly, the reason I hesitate on Utah is because water.
Right.
Water is the fight of the future that I don't think people see coming. Mm-hmm. Some do, but Utah has this law that you can only harvest 2,500 gallons of rainwater per parcel. And we're going to work on fixing this because I'm actually part of a desert restoration project in a place called Burrell, Utah. Mm-hmm. It's 4,000 square miles of nothing but desert. but it's called the Escalante Valley. But you can read historical writings. It's called the Escalante Valley because the Escalante Catholic Party that went through there. And in their journals in the 1700s, they said, we have never seen more beautiful, lush grassland in all of our travels than right here. And it's a complete desert now. So we know with proper management, that can be restored. But one of the things that's in our way is water. It's really expensive to find a water share if you can find one. And there's talk that if the aquifers don't rise, they're going to shut down people's water. And I'm telling you, it isn't going to rise because they're not doing anything to allow the water to penetrate the soil to refill the aquifers. So they're just waiting out the clock. And so what they'll do is they'll revoke any water rights newer than a certain age, right? And so, well, when you're growing a farm or whatever, you need a lot of water. So rainwater harvesting, the current law is you can only harvest 2,500 gallons per parcel. And I said, per parcel? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, so if I have a 100 acre parcel, it's 2,500 gallons. And they're like, yep. And I said, so if I have a 1 acre parcel, it's the same 2,500 gallons? They're like, yep. I'm like, that's the dumbest, laziest law I've ever heard of.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is see them make a law that says, catch what you want, use it on the ground you caught it on. Because then I can catch it and move it where my livestock is and start replenishing the soil so I can start putting water back in the aquifer. But you've got these policies in place by people that don't know anything, and they're making these decisions. So Utah's hard because of water. We love Cody, but I always look at Arkansas. You know, I don't know a lot about Arkansas, but they have a lot of water.
Okay.
And they've got a great growing climate, and property there is still pretty affordable right now.
Really?
So I'm like, any reason to go more towards the Midwest or the South is maybe not a bad idea, but
that's all. You're so learned on such the myriad of topics, but all of these topics are a web that connect.
Yeah.
When did that start?
Yeah, good question. So that started when the vision came, and I said, I'm the wrong guy.
2020.
Yeah, 2020.
Okay.
I'm the wrong guy. And had the reconciliation with God that he wasn't going to let it go. So I started asking around. And I met my mentor, who's a business partner. He's the guy actually developing Tech Ridge in St. George. And, meet the guy for the first time, tell him my vision. And he was the perfect mentor because he didn't pull punches. He said, AJ, the one business I would never get back in as a startup is tech. And I'm like, really? And he said, because only 1 in 2,000 make it. And it was very difficult. They exited a very successful company called Busy. It was a software for contractors.
Okay.
And so he said, he just said, if you're going to do this, you better absolutely know that there's a place for it. And that was in 2020. So I spent 3.5 years asking questions and learning from anybody I could in the space. So I'm very careful to tell people I'm not the expert, but I've shaken the hand of many experts in many areas of what I talk about. I also tell people that what I know today may change tomorrow because of somebody I meet. So I evolve just like everybody else. That's why I say I'm not committed to being right. I'm committed to getting it right. So if I have to change or adapt my approach because I've taken some new information, I will. But that's what it was. It was 3.5 years of asking questions before we went in and bothered to raise money to do the first line of code. And after 3.5 years, I found myself running a slaughterhouse in Cody, Wyoming. If you would have told me that in 2020, that AJ, in order for you to know how to do this, you're going to have to become a plant manager at a USDA slaughterhouse, I would have quit right then. I had no clue. The only thing I knew about processing was dropping cows off on one side and picking up packaged beef on the other. That's the only thing I knew. Well, God works in mysterious ways. There's a lot that's happened in this window I'm telling you about, but find myself in Cody, the president overseeing a white label that we were trying to build, a beef label. We were going to source from the ranchers because what I ran into with my family is now I couldn't get slaughter, but I had a customer base that was growing, but now I can't even get product to give my customers. So the only way to build a brand was to own as much of the supply chain that you were working in as possible, vertically integrate.
Is slaughtering regulated, like hard?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So you couldn't create your own slaughter, like a mini slaughter?
You can.
Okay.
It would be under custom exempt, meaning you could custom exempt means you can cut a cow and process it, but only you can eat it.
Oh.
Or I can bring you a cow that I own.
Right.
Since it's mine, you can cut it for me, but only I can eat it. I can't sell it.
Okay. So let's follow that. Why is that a thing?
Well, they claim, and how it was originally established is to make sure people don't get sick. So if you're going to process a lot of meat and send it to millions of people throughout the country, there needs to be some oversight to make sure that it's clean and you're not getting E. coli and salmonella and all these things, right? So that was the purpose of setting this up, the USDA, and managing that so that we're not making people sick.
So E. coli, just for the
Oh, yeah.
audience,
Mhm.
that's fecal matter generally, right?
Yep. Can come from fecal matter. Yep.
So if you're cutting down a cow,
Yeah.
then you just have to avoid the large intestines,
Yeah.
right?
Well, so your cow has their hide, and a lot
Yep.
of times there'll be manure on the hide.
Okay.
So when they skin it,
Mhm.
and as it's swinging around, not alive, but
Gotcha.
as the carcass is hanging there, it can flip on it, and so the inspector's there to look at it to see if there's anything that needs to be cut off, and they'll have a butcher right there next to them that will, hook it with a little hook and trim it off, make sure it's all clean before it goes into storage.
Okay.
Your custom exempt shops, by and large, are doing that anyway because it's their own personal reputation that own these places, but it's just that extra level of oversight. Right. We saw our USDA inspectors at the plant I run as a partner. We didn't create conflict. Okay. I said, help me where I can't see it. And we'll get better at catching our own stuff before you have to. Let's just work together. But if you see it and we missed it, thank you. Let us fix it. Yeah. That's the relationship we established. And so we got along really well with our USDA inspector because we tried to make their job so easy they didn't need to do anything. But that's the difference. So you have 3 tiers of processing. You've got your custom exempt. You have to own it to eat it. Then you've got state inspected. It's not federally inspected, so I can process it here and sell it to you here, but I can't sell it across state lines. You can drive across state lines and buy it, but I can't send it across state lines and sell it.
And what's the reasoning behind that?
Again, just not federally regulated. State inspection should be enough, but you've got these hierarchies, and so they're like, well, you're not federal, so we're better. Really, whatever. But then at the USDA level, a USDA inspected slaughterhouse, now you can send it anywhere you want in the country after it's packaged, and anybody can buy it. So when you're buying beef at the store, you're buying a USDA processed product.
What does it cost somebody to do that?
Usually it's more because you have more regulations to jump through hoops. Right. And I don't know the exact number, but the more personnel and the more resources that we have to put in at the slaughterhouse level, the more we have to charge. So you might be able to go to a custom shop and pay 70 cents a pound cut and wrapped. A USDA is going to cost you more, about $1.20 or something like that. Just because I have more paperwork I have to deal with. I have more manpower I have to labor time I have to deal with because of all the extra regulations.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't even I was like, why are there only 30?
Yeah,
you did mention that, yeah.
Yeah, so the 30 number you're speaking to is we have 4 beef companies that control 85% of the meat supply in our country. And they operate 80% of our beef processed in their 30 massive slaughterhouses. We're talking 6,000 head a day and up. And so when you shut one of those down, you are causing a significant disruption in our food supply chain. In 2021, JBS was hacked by a Russian hacking organization. I think it was Russian. They had to pay an $11 million ransom to unlock their system. And so if you remember the shortages that happened, yes, they happened from COVID because of the supply chain disruption, but the shortages that came next where they started limiting what you could buy came because JBS, the largest of the 4, couldn't process for a few days. And a few days to the average person, like, what's the big deal? We're talking 6,000 plus head a day. That's a big deal when there's feeding 320 million people that are primarily coming out of that. And the reason I highlight the 30 to articulate the supply chain fragility that we have, I was at a conference and this gentleman was speaking that is within the organization, worked with the CIA and Border Patrol. And he talked about the millions of illegal immigrants that are in our country. But he also said, we know there are 20,000 highly trained Chinese operatives here. Wow. So as a military guy and supply chain as a tactic for disruption, slaughterhouses are soft targets. They're not heavily secured. They do have security, but a fighting force, they have no security. Right. It would be no problem to take out 30 facilities and put us into famine, just like that.
I mean, I'm imagining that scenario happening, and I'm also like, why wouldn't I just go down to my local ranch or farmer to buy beef from them with or without a license? What's the penalty for somebody, a rancher, to do that?
You can go right to them, and you should. Because if, like, let's say you go to your local, there's a problem, you go to your local rancher and like, dude, this thing sucks, I'm going to buy from you.
Yeah.
Great, here you go. Do what you want with it. Yeah. So you can go buy it from him and take it to a custom guy or do it yourself or have him do it or whatever, right? Yeah. Plenty of people around Utah know how to skin a deer. Yeah. You're going to be able to skin a cow. Yep. So that's not a problem. Mm-hmm. Where the problem comes in is that the majority of that we're eating is shipped in from other countries. Mm-hmm. So if their facilities are gone, they're not shipping more beef in. Mm-hmm. So that 87 million cattle number we were talking about, mm-hmm. do you think the guy next door is going to have it when you're in a city of multi-millions and there's very few people growing beef? You're not going to have it. We are in a position in our nation that, I told people this before the election, no matter who wins, we still might see famine. Mm-hmm. I think for sure we see it with Kamala, mm-hmm. but it still could happen with Trump and RFK, and actually might even be more likely just because nefarious parties want to cause problems. Yeah. So it's going to be a long time before America is in a position where we don't have to worry about that. It's like we talked about a minute ago before we started. J.D. Vance a couple of weeks ago said that America, for the first time in history, has become a net importer of food, meaning we have to bring in more than we grow to feed our own population. Wow. So we're just in a bad spot. Yeah. And I say that flippantly. It's not good.
So this is a matter of national security. Yep. This is a matter of avoiding famine. So it seems like you have from every angle your purpose and your mission with From the Farm. Let's roll it out, because
we've mentioned.
So what is From the Farm?
Yeah.
Why is it important? Why are you doing it now?
Yeah. So From the Farm is the easy way I explain it. It's like the Airbnb of food, mm-hmm. or you can call it an online farmer's market. Mm-hmm. So you go to fromthefarm.org, search the product you're looking for, and you'll connect directly with farmers and ranchers that are growing it, processing it, and have the capacity to get it to you. Mm-hmm. That's what From the Farm is. But the vision was, we can't just stop a broken system. If we're successful in stopping the loss of what we have now, we're not good right now. Mm-hmm. We have to build a path forward to a new agrarian movement, meaning more growers. What's also happening right now is one of the fastest growing movements is what you and I talked about a minute ago, homesteading. Yep. A lot of people, COVID woke them up and they're like, I need 40 acres and a cow, right? We got to get there fast. Yep. So our vision is to do what Airbnb did, which was, how many people do you know have Airbnbs? Because they made it so simple. Yep. That's what they did. They made it simple to be in short-term rentals. I don't have to market. I just have to clean it, take photos, have it ready for the next guest, and I'm going to make money. Mm-hmm. If we can do that with food, it will become very apparent to people who are already homesteading that we have a shortage of supply, but we have customers for you. So come on here. And I know there are people just like you and I sitting in a cubicle scrolling, and their whole feed is homesteading and trad wife. Mm-hmm. And that's what they dream of. Yep. But they don't know how to make it work financially. Mm-hmm. If we're successful and we need you, mm-hmm. you can see a path to get the heck out of the cubicle and onto 40 acres growing food, because we need it. Mm-hmm. So the vision is to not just provide it for those who are already growing, but to build that opportunity for those that's what they want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and just so we're super clear, yeah. that although you simplified it, has such profound effects.
Yes,
it's going to have such huge implications because you are moving from a centralized food system to a decentralized, yep. And now we're going straight to the farm.
Yep.
And if you guys don't know the nutrient density compared to the average, meat in Walmarts, in the big box stores, it's the profile is like 50% or more nutrient density when it comes to it, right?
Yeah, and I've seen the reports myself in my research, and people I know and ranchers that have sent their beef off to be third-party tested, mm-hmm. nutrients compared to nutrient profiles of other beef.
And what was that?
It was 75% higher in phytonutrients. Wow. Non-essential and essential amino acids, phytonutrients, and the omega 3 to 6 profiles were perfect.
Really? And
Omega,
what are
you would
those?
never need fish oil supplements.
Wow.
Like the omega-3s
Yeah.
were perfectly balanced to what you
Mhm.
need.
Mhm.
Fish oil is a new thing.
Yeah.
We used to not need it because we got it in animals that ate grass, and then we ate the animals that ate grass that put high profile, high omega-3s, and now I'm eating it. So I got omega-3s. You didn't need a fish oil.
Yeah.
Now we need to supplement for what's not in our food, which is what we're dealing with as a sick country. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, I was doing genetic testing years back, and it seemed like everybody had the Mediterranean diet need, which
Yeah.
is more fish.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
oh, you too?
Yeah.
We all have
Yeah.
the same.
Yeah, that's what we're up to. We're just really trying to make a difference there. But on the back of that, though, we have to do it from a place of philanthropic interests, not profit.
Okay. Yeah,
Profit,
speak to that.
yeah, profit will be there. If I generate a platform that brings millions of consumers, there's plenty of ways to make profit, but we can't do it on the back of the producers. There's not enough margins in food to have all these middlemen taking their cut. That's why we're at where we're at now. They can't pencil it out, so they close. So we said, what if we build a platform that, other than what it costs to run the platform and do the marketing, they don't pay anything else. Yep. So our producers pay a 15% commission only on what's sold. So we eat what we kill, and that's it. Now we'll have some tiered offers as we grow and can offer more value, but that's it. There's no contract. There's no sign-up fee. We're here to serve. If we can help our producers be profitable, their next generation will take over and we'll still have producers. And if we can make those producers profitable, other people will see it and want to get into it. Yeah. And so we that's why we've made this commitment that we're also never selling, because money's easy to come by if they can see a path to an exit that's going to be good for them. Yeah. So it's challenging to raise capital for this, but there's plenty of people like us that have become aware, like maybe we ought to do some things bigger than ourselves. Yeah. And so the never sell commitment is that if we're successful in doing this, we know that it'll be worth whatever we ask to those that are being negatively affected by it. Yeah. Big food, big pharma. How do we get these guys out of the way? And we can't risk that, because if we're successful, this is America's new path forward for a food system that actually works for America, not just for a few shareholders. Yep. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole topic in itself that we could just deep dive and talk about.
Totally.
For the most part, I do want people to recognize that you're not coming at from a us versus them mentality. Nope. And that's something too I've been grappling with, being more and more public about demonizing an institution or elevating one or good versus bad type of thing.
Yeah.
It's more so just recognizing that, if we are off path with the mission and the values of big business and of putting out products and figuring out how do I maximize profit, profit maximization as a North Star. Like maybe if we were just saying, maybe move away from that concept.
Yeah.
And start moving towards what customers and consumers actually want. Yep. Which is something that when they put into their body, it's not harming them. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so for me, if you're like me, if you're even curious about the topic, or for me, I've been reading labels of products and try to avoid hyper processed food for the last 15 years. But if you're new on this path, just recognize, man, you could skip all of that. Like you don't need to learn about food dyes, and you don't need to learn about any of these ingredients. Just go straight to the farm.
Yeah.
Go shake your farm.
Yep.
Like,
shake the hand.
Use your product.
Yep.
If you're eating a paleo centric diet or a meat centric diet, like that's a huge part of it. And just going straight to the farm. And eventually, there's going to be a point where the price of the meat is going to be more cost effective from your rancher, not only more nutrient dense and all the other benefits, but it's going to cost less than what's going to.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I think the challenge for the average person is recognizing that we're going to have to suffer a little bit because of the position we put ourselves in. And the suffering might be paying for more for higher quality food, because we have bastardized higher quality food to the point where there's not enough. Yeah. Well, so it's going to take time to build that system back, and then the pricing will even itself out. Reagan was the one who lifted the antitrust laws in the 80s that allowed for what we now see as the big four. It's JBS, Morfrig, both Brazilian owned, Tyson, and Cargill. Those four companies own 85% of the beef supply chain, right? it was that decision in the 80s that eventually led to this. Because what he basically said was, okay, this company can buy out this company as long as it doesn't affect the downstream. It doesn't have a downstream negative effect on the consumer. Yeah. And I don't think the decision that back then, I'm confident that Reagan had no idea what it would lead to, right? I don't know that, but I'm pretty confident that those decisions were just what was in front of him and couldn't see 40 years down the road or whatever, what it was going to turn into. So what I tell people is we need big food right now. Yep. Like we talked about. Yep. Most of the food is 80% is going through these 4 companies. Mm-hmm. So we need them to feed the population we have, but we need to start the process, and they're going to fight it kicking and screaming because they have shareholders, right? A company's only job is to increase profit. Right. So I actually don't think, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think that the CEOs running some of these companies are like Mr. Burns in the glass tower, wanting to screw everybody.
100%, yeah.
They've been hired to increase profits.
Yep.
That's their job.
Their livelihood depends on it.
It's almost like AI.
Yep.
Their only job is to increase profits. Even if you can see something negative, we just have to do it this way. We're going to just, it runs itself. And if you don't, we're hiring somebody else. And if you don't, we're hiring somebody else. And if you don't, we're hiring somebody else. So, but we have to start making that transition. And that means...
Speaking to that, not to cut you off, because I think this is an important point. Speaking to that, I mean, it's still, you're thinking about somebody saving you, right? So it's still like a savior mentality where it's like the CEOs of these organizations should have goodwill and change of heart. But the way that you just phrased it's like they're not in control anyways because they will be replaced. They're a cog in a machine. The machine, the system is the problem. Yep. Right. The infrastructure on what we built is a problem. Right. So I'll give you a personal example. So during COVID, before I started doing podcasting again and started a media company and spun this off in the last 3 or 4 years and done everything that I've done, I invented a portable fitness product. Okay. Because that's when the gym shut down. Yep. So I still need to do it. Yeah. So it was like resistance bands and like a platform and blah, 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 right? So I literally invented something. Yeah, right? Cool. And so I had somebody mock it up and create everything. And then we put in our first product order, or we were putting in our first product order. And that's when the supply chain was shutting down. And so at that point, it was a 6-month wait time. And so I said, when I put in this order for 1,000 units, you have no idea when I'm going to get it. They're like, it could be 6 months. It could be a year. You dealt with the same thing. Yeah. And in that moment, I was just like, what the And so then I started studying supply chain end to end. What does this look like? And then you figure out Wall Street and big consumer package good, just product companies in general that produce products. They all went to China to manufacture everything. So everything is coming out of China. Yep. We don't have domestic manufacturing plants. I said, dude, why hasn't anybody started, right? And it's the margins. Yeah. So everywhere you look, whether it's big food, big business, during every kind of step of this process, we have built a foundation that this was the inevitable outcome. And so we can't look towards the same people that step by step incrementally caused the issue to change it, right? There's no CEO that's going to change this. And this message is empowering at the end of it. So this is the punchline. The punchline is your decisions are what's going to change this. Your day-to-day purchasing behavior is going to change this. That's so empowering. Tell me something more empowering than saying, if I don't buy it, it will not be produced. Yep, exactly. That is awesome. Yeah. So that has been my rebellious, Gandhi. Like I'm doing my Gandhi, rebellion by not going to McDonald's. Literally that symbol. Yeah,
that's right.
Going to Whole Foods and going to natural grocers instead of going to big box chains. Yep. Right? That's right. That's the rebellion. The next step of that rebellion is shaking the hand of the men and women who produce the food that I consume. And that's the most empowering thing we can do. You're redirecting that spend and you might be spending a little bit more money. Maybe. Yep. And that's even the argument is still out. The jury's still out on that. Because I have some numbers here that are kind of interesting. But if you do that, like we can change everything. This is the best way to say it. Yeah. So this is a book from Primal Uprising. Read it if you haven't. In the human zoo, our food may as well be human chow, dumped in front of us for us to pay for and consume, like it or not. We have the illusion of food freedom when what we actually have is food tyranny. We think we choose what we eat, but we are being sold and manipulated into eating food that doesn't nourish us, and our choices are limited beyond what most know of. Big Ag includes food production giants like Nestle, PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, Tyson, Mars, Kellogg's, Dannon, and General Mills. It's also intimately linked to the FDA and Department of Agriculture, the USDA. It profits from food sales, and many of these industry leaders have advised and continue to advise the government on what it should tell people to eat. When you understand that, like have that point of reference, I know you mentioned earlier in the podcast, like you have that point of reference now.
Mm-hmm.
You have that point of reference. Once you hear it, the awareness has grown, like you're understanding, like even though we are siding with and saying like we do need big food here to keep feeding the population, you can hold that idea in your head, but also say we could do better at the same time. Yeah. And those might seem to oppose each other, but they're not. They're not opposing each other, right? You did mention something early in the podcast that there's a dozen other competitors or people that are in your space. You don't see them as competitors. What's the differentiation? What makes you guys different?
Probably our commitment to never sell.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I mean, look, if you're going to build a system like this that has that potential, why would you risk selling it and having it be ruined? I would love for every one of those founders to make the same declaration. I still wouldn't see them as a competitor. But what I think maybe the other thing too is that I spent 3.5 years. I come from ag families, and many of the other ones don't. They have tech backgrounds and they saw the need, which is great. But I spent many years interviewing hundreds of producers to make sure what we were doing actually would help. And so yeah, I think because we come to it from that foundation of this is legacy. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
Because if you go and help a platform grow that's just going to sell, you don't know that the people that buy it are going to keep that same mission going that you wanted to support. Just like Epic Foods. Epic Foods was all beef tallow, for example, their beef tallow product. Well, it got sold out to General Mills, and all of a sudden they discovered General Mills was cutting it with other things. Yep. It's like a bad Coke dealer cutting it with something you don't want. I don't do Coke, but
we get the analogy.
But yeah, so why would you do that? And for the people that supported it, why would you do that to them? Right? So we tell our producers and our customers, by supporting our platform, that this is the hill we're dying on. Yep. Like, I'm doing this for this reason so that when I'm on my deathbed, God willing, I'm looking at my grandkids and know that they have family farms and ranches to buy from. Yep. That's my grandkids, that's my kids, and then the next generation. We could see a massive transformation for my grandkids if we get to work on this now. And it is going to be uncomfortable. But yeah, these other groups, like I said, I'm so grateful they're out there talking about this. The other side too is if you come after a program like mine, you're not just coming after me. So there's also safety in numbers, right? If you're going to regulate me, you're going to have to take on all these other groups that are doing the same thing. And I would much rather be shoulder to shoulder with other good people trying to make a difference in the early stage, regardless of what they do down the road in this early stage, than be alone. So
we got to come up with a tagline, something like Maha, right? Make America great again. But like,
man, that would be good.
I will never sell, because somebody being in this space, which again, on not a side tangent or anything, but because I did start an organic snack company years and years ago, I did see that pattern, and it hasn't stopped.
No,
you got a good smoothie brand, it's bought by what is that, Doll or whoever it is, right? If you got a good like food product or like ingredients product, it's bought out by the Heinz, the Heinz organization, Primal Kitchen, like Siete with Coca-Cola now. And so there's two parts of it, because I do love business.
Yes.
And I am a proponent for meritocracy and conscious capitalism. Capitalism in general, I don't have there's nothing wrong with
Likewise.
that. And so I'm not coming here to say there's a right or wrong way to do it. It's just when you see that I'm both cheering for them, like congratulations for the setting up your lineage and your kids for success.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's right. Generationally. I'm a second generation immigrant,
Okay.
and so my father has owned a business for 35 years. This was DNA. Doing what I'm doing now is just, I was built
Yeah.
for this stuff. You know what I mean?
Right.
But no one in my family line, again, second generation in this country, I'm starting from the bottom.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like,
Yep.
I'm standing on the short shoulder of a giant, from my father, but that's it. That's the end of it, So we don't have deep pockets or, rich grandparents, nothing like that. And so for me, I'm like, yes, satay food chips, like amazing. I just hate that you sold
Yeah. Yeah.
to people that may not have that.
Right.
And other people have made the argument, like, maybe these guys are going to start changing. Maybe they'll start swapping out seed oils for, other oils that we know are less inflammatory. Maybe they'll start swapping out ingredients. And again, it starts with the consumer's choices, right? So hopefully there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but I think the next best thing next to that is exactly what you're doing. Saying, I am willing to die on this hill, and I will not sell this company for $1 billion, for $5 billion, for maybe for 10, but
Nope.
no, but like, I will not sell.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, man, how do you come to that conviction? Because I don't even like, I am very convicted. I have strong beliefs, loosely held. I'm usually more adaptable, but I can't say definitively I would not sell for billions and billions of dollars anything that I do. How do you have that conviction?
God asked me.
Okay.
Same time he asked me to do this, it was also right there with it that you can't sell it. That's very intimidating for me because the size this company could get to, I don't have any experience there. But I also believe in some of the teachings of Think and Grow Rich that I don't have to. I just have to bring really amazing people on board that can. So yeah, God said, don't sell it. You can't. And so I said, okay, I won't. Look, in 2 generations, like I don't know my great grandparents. I don't even know their names. Some of them I do because they were around during the early phase of my life, but my great grandparents were primarily gone. So they'll bring them up, but I have no connection, which means that's going to be me. So $10 billion doesn't matter. Yeah, it might give my family generational wealth. However, look at people who have participated in generational wealth and didn't earn it.
Yep.
They're shitbags.
Oh, yeah.
Unless they had parents that said, I got all this money, you don't.
Yep.
Go earn it.
Yep.
So what would be the purpose of that? Yeah, I can do a lot with those resources, but listen, you can't be greedy. If we're worth 10 billion, we're probably doing well, and I don't need 10 billion. Yeah. So the only reason I would sell is out of greed. That's the only reason. Because if you got a company worth that, what do I need? A yacht? I don't want to be on a yacht. If I get money, I'm buying more ranches to keep in production. Helping families buy ranches so they can be in production. That's what we'd do with money. But I'm not taking it with me. I want my kids to earn their own keep. If they want to, it's a legacy business. It's so fun to have kids and hear how they're picking stuff up and then watch them tell others what they've heard from you, especially kids.
Yeah, right.
So I think they'll take it on, but I want them to have the same values and understanding that I have so that they understand why we're doing it down the road. They say first generation builds it, second runs it, third loses it. So 3 generations from now, hopefully we've done enough that the country's doing it, okay on its own, that even if my greats decide to sell it off, maybe it won't affect us. But it just kind of goes back to where we are actually as a country. If we don't do some things that are void of what's in it for me, then we are going to keep getting the same results we have. We're in the position we're in because a lot of people looked at it and said, how do I get another yacht? How do I get another house? How do I drive all these fancy cars? And yet the people working for you on the warehouse floor can't even pay for rent. Like that, it just doesn't make any sense to me. I'm a capitalist, but conscious capitalism. If the people helping us do this aren't also having an amazing life, then I am not doing right as a leader. Let me go back. I would like to go back to a conversation about people and buying and the cost.
Okay.
Because we're going through that. We went through that ourselves.
Yeah.
And there was some guilt there because I was still buying a lot of food from Walmart, and I'm like telling people don't buy from Walmart. But the transition to go from grocery store to locally sourced is challenging, especially if you have no connection, don't even know how to find a rancher or a farmer. So what we teach is behavioral change science.
Okay.
For food.
Mm-hmm.
Pick one item in your pantry or your fridge, just one, and replace it locally. Start there. Yeah. That's it. Just pick one. We started with beef because that's what I was surrounded by. Yeah. All my family raised beef. So we started with beef. And then we did that and got comfortable with that to where anytime we want beef, even if they don't have it, I now know how to find it. So I'm building habits, right? And then we say, okay, we got the beef. Now what? Oh, eggs. We're going to buy eggs locally. Now we're going to buy dairy locally. But you stack those habits on top of each other. And then before you know it, you'll look and now we're 90% local food unless it's out of season, right? So the only time we go to the store now is for condiments type stuff or products that are out of season that we still are trying to eat with our meals. Yeah. But we're 90% local food. The other thing we've learned is my wife says, because she does all the meal prepping and cooking, we spend less money a month buying local, even though we're paying more money than we did when we were buying conventional food.
Yeah.
Because she's making it. And when you make dinner, you've got lunch.
Yes.
Typically you have leftovers.
Yes.
And guess what? Leftovers are way better the next day because they've marinated in the seasoning. But so there's some behavioral changes that need to happen for people to start making these switches.
So from your experience, conventional seems like it's usually the most cost effective, right? And that's for a myriad of reasons. Then you'd say organic, but then you'd say if you go local, it's less than organic.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And organic is a bunch of BS anyway. So you're probably wasting your money. You know, they have herbicides and pesticides that meet organic requirements. Wow. Yeah. So they can spray it and call it organic, but it's still a derivative of a molecule that has an impact on the human body, but they can call it organic. So what I'm really speaking like grocery store versus not grocery store,
yep.
Right? So we see that we've saved money because when my wife, first of all, the nutrient density, the body is satiated. If I eat a Hot Pocket now, I'm going to need a Hot Pocket in an hour, right? And probably another hour and then in another hour because I'm not satiated. So I end up eating more, consuming more, which costs more. Oh, it only cost me $5 for this box of Hot Pockets. Yeah, but you buy a lot of those and you're sick. You're calling out sick potentially. Your body's breaking down. You're spending more money in pharma. All of those things compound, but we separate them. You know, there's a quote I really love. Pay the farmer now or you're going to pay pharma later. You're going to pay for it. Yeah. You're going to pay for it one way or another. Yeah. I would rather be in my 70s fully functioning and still being productive than in a rest home because I didn't feed my body and now it's broken down and somebody has to take care of me. Yeah. Because if I'm 60 and working, I'm producing and bringing in revenue. That's more money in my pocket than out. Yeah. You're going to go into debt or worse later on in life with poor food choices than to invest in your health. And that's what we're trying to get people to understand. You have to realize this is an investment in your health. You know, I used to tell people in my gym, you get a car, beautiful car, you take such good care of it. And when the tires wear out, you just replace them, right? Keep the oil change, you're going to have this thing running forever. Your body doesn't replace that way. I can't just go change the tires out on my body. Right? I can't just go upgrade to a new software system because I've destroyed the one I have. Yeah. We have to take that seriously. Yeah. You know, I met this guy named Lou Hollander, 83 years old when I met him. He was the oldest person to ever complete the Ironman. It was such a cool conversation. So he's 83 and he was a physicist. This guy started taking supplements before supplements were a thing. Wow. He took horse supplements.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, because he's like, they're giving this athlete, horse, supplements to perform better. You know, is it glutamine or glucosamine for your joints? Well, I have joints. I'm an athlete. Why am I not taking that for my joints? So he started buying horse supplements that he knew that weren't going to hurt him because they were just the same thing for animals, but the same ingredient. Yeah. Anyway, he said, you know, I'm a physicist, so I ran the math years ago that the oldest a human body could be to complete the Ironman, the task put on the body, would be 83 years old. And he said, and I've done it. But the problem is I'm 83 and I've qualified for Kona next year. Wow. And he said, so I have three choices. I need to rework my theory, train harder, or quit. So he trained harder, and then I was somewhere and I see Lou Hollander crossing the finish line in Kona, Hawaii, completing the Ironman under the time cap. But what he said was, his theory was that the cells in the human body, we are designed to start, they don't regenerate. At about 32 years old, cell regeneration stops. It doesn't stop, it slows down. Yep. We start aging, right? I certainly know that when I got 35, I'm like, geez, I don't recover from that CrossFit workout nearly as well as I did when I was 25, you know? Exactly. So the cells stop regenerating. And his theory around that was you need anaerobic training because it tricks the cells into regeneration. Okay. Like he said, so if you're running a mile, sprint the last 200. Get in that anaerobic state. You're telling your cells, I'm not done. So you get in that anaerobic state. But what he also said was, if you're not training by 40, you're behind the curve. Anybody that's 40 or younger, as long as you're training and you maintain it, you'll be able to maintain it for a long time to come. But it's not just training. Anybody who does training understands the connection between training and fuel. You got to fuel your body. Yeah. And it's all together. You can't, Greg Glassman, the founder of CrossFit, said you can't outwork a bad diet. Yeah. They did the research. They followed people that trained and didn't eat good, and they followed the people that trained and ate good, and there was a significant difference. Yeah. So foundation of everything is nutrition, but even beyond that, the foundation of everything is soil and soil health. Everything on the planet is attached to the beginning, which is soil health, which is so fascinating. You want to build this business, or you want to go to Mars, or you want to do these things. Guess what? If the soil is not healthy and producing food, you ain't getting there. So everything is at the foundation of soil.
The United States had tens of millions of buffalo at one point, right? Yep. Roaming from the Dakotas down to Mexico and back and forth. Mm-hmm. And what that caused was, and what we're now finding, right, or what we found for years, but what's now becoming more apparent is that's why the United States, a large portion of it was grasslands and had a beautiful topsoil. Yes. And for people listening, topsoil is the nutrient density needed to actually grow stuff that's going to have any nutrients in them, period.
Exactly.
And so let's talk about how many crops do we have left in that topsoil. And then now let's talk about how regenerative agriculture can regenerate that topsoil so we are not doomed.
Yeah,
do you know how many crops we have left?
I'd heard it was like 60. We have 60 more harvests, and then the planet's over.
That was like 5 years ago, but yeah, sure.
Yeah, right. So now it's like 55. Yeah, it was somewhere around 50 to 60.
No,
right?
I'm saying that number keeps throwing out.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Same number.
60 harvests.
Yeah, 60 harvests. Mm-hmm. I don't know how much I buy into that specific number, but I certainly can see the impact we've had with agriculture as it's done today. Mm-hmm. And, it's not great. But regenerative agriculture is the process of managing the land as nature would if you weren't there. Mm-hmm. But you are there, so take the role of nature. And your role is predator, right? Predators, the bison, they always stayed clumped together in massive herds because that was safety. And they were always on the move because they were grazing and eating down the food, but also the predator push. They were always moving from predators and more forage. And they did it, that confinement means they laid this layer of manure and urine, and even the saliva from the tongue of a cow they have found triggers certain responses in grass.
Wow.
Right. So
like God's plan.
Yeah, like, okay. God's plan. Yeah. Will Harris, real quick side tangent. Will Harris said he was calling out Bill Gates and what he was saying is like, look, engineers are not going to solve this because an engineer is trained to think linearly, but nature works as a whole. And as soon as you remove one piece of the whole, you've broke it. Oh, yeah. And so you can't engineer around this. You just have to mimic nature. We are nature, but we have to mimic that. So we are predator. We're the apex predator. Well, okay, how do I take that with the knowledge I have and apply that? So now what happens is on smaller pieces of ground, because we have property and highways and all the things that break up the massive savannas that used to be unadulterated. Mm-hmm. So you take your piece of land, you have your livestock, and you clump them together in electric fence, typically is what they'll do. So you got a 100-acre paddock, you'll break it into 10-acre paddocks, right? And then you'll put them all in this one 10-acre. I'm being very easy on this for the average listener. Put them all in this 10 acres so that they concentrate their manure, their urine, their impact, even the hooves. They found that the hooves create pocks for rain. And so when rain sits in that pock, it has time to soak in. So all of it is connected, right? So you keep them there for 10 acres until whatever your plan is to move them daily, depending on your herd size. Then you move to the next one. You're the predator, moving them in confinement and just rotating them around. I have seen personally through my research and people I know personally, what we destroyed in 100 years, Mother Nature's like, hold my beer and watch this. If you back me, I'm going to restore this thing in 5. And we've seen it. Now, depending on your soils, it could take longer, right? Your that kind of stuff, but it's amazing. So my first concern about our environment came from an ayahuasca experience. And I had I was like the people I was around, no connection to our impact on nature. Like, we're here to dominate. Right. And so any conversation outside of that was, you're a woo-woo barefoot crunchy. Like, that's probably BS. That I'm going to speak for myself. I don't know if my other people in my circle thought that way. That's how I saw it. And then I do ayahuasca, and I know why, because ayahuasca is from nature. And it wasn't even in my experience when I did it that I'm trying to articulate here. If you've ever done this, it's really hard to articulate these experiences. But what I went through wasn't anything to do with nature. But I left there with this open heart, this bleeding heart for nature, which was weird. Because now I'm reconciling and wrestling with my epigenetics and this new download of this empathy that I didn't have before. So my first fear that woke me up around 2016 was desertification. And then I came across Alan Savory. And then I came across Kiss the Ground, and it was in 2020, and it was just one thing after another. And so then my first concerns that we're just screwed. Like, anybody out there listening that we have 60 harvests and you're freaking out, it's not true, because we have a choice. I think the media likes to, listen, my social media, I get far more engagement if I scare the shit out of somebody than if I tell them something good. It's just, people like to be scared. So if you're hearing these 60 harvests, it's not the truth. We have an alternative, right? And so I'm like, okay, cool. I first got into regenerative agriculture. I took Alan Savory's course. I took Understanding Ag's course, because my whole life I've been trying to get into agriculture. I admired my family that were ranchers, but my uncle told me a long time ago, if you want to be a millionaire rancher, start with 10 million, because you're going to lose it all. There's no money in this. And so I spent my whole life trying to be profitable somewhere else just so I could go buy a ranch and get on the ranch. That was what was going on. Yeah. When everything went bankrupt, I'm like, shit, I've been trying to get into ranching in all these other ways. Why don't I just go do what I feel like I'm called to do? Yeah. And that's when I called my cousin and I said, can I sell beef for your ranch? That's how I got started. So first it was connection to our impact on the land with agriculture, and then it became the supply chain. But now I get to help with both, because we work with incredible producers doing regenerative, and we work with incredible producers that are not. It is not my place to tell you as a conventional farmer that you shouldn't. It's just my place to serve you. And then if you meet somebody that's going to change your mind and it works for your context, great. I got the resources to connect you with, but I'm not going to tell you how to do it. Yeah. I'm just here to serve, right? But yeah, regenerative agriculture. There's a guy named Neil Spackman, lives here in Utah. If you are interested, look up the Albaida project in Saudi Arabia.
How do you spell
that? Okay, Google will fix it for you.
He regenerated the Sahara Desert. Is that right?
It was in Saudi Arabia. Yeah, and it wasn't the whole. It was a section, right? Yeah. But he's got a great documentary. It's like 14 minutes long, just him putting together the project and pictures and videos of what they've done over time. If you watch that, you'll be filled with hope. You'll realize that we're not in trouble, which is why we needed RFK. We need somebody who understands the intricacies of politics, but is so connected to this movement that he could make those two come together and work. Yeah. Right. And so we're living in a really challenging time, but there's some miracles happening that I think, is amazing.
This is a system he learned from natural processes, right?
Yeah. And my understanding is when they called him to be the leader of this project, he didn't know anything about it. So he asked them to send me somewhere, and I don't know where he went, but he said, send me somewhere to learn and then I'll come and do it. But what they did in that particular project was just slow the flow of water. They didn't use livestock in this particular project. They just did a different method, so what you're seeing there is in the watersheds, right? So you have two hillsides that kind of come into a ravine.
Yeah.
Well, when it rains, like here,
Yeah.
we get most of our rain once.
Right.
Phoenix especially.
Mm-hmm.
You get your monsoon season, and then that's it. You don't
Yeah.
get any more moisture. You know, Utah gets moisture in the mountains up top, but that water, when it rains, it comes down so much at one time that it just floods, right? And so
Yeah.
what they did is they put check dams in those. So as you're coming down the hill, they put these check dams. So what happens is when that rain pulls up, comes down to the check dam, fills up, slows it down, and then the extra spills over and goes to the next one, spills over. But that water has time to soak in. And that allowed the seed bank, because you'll have seeds that are dormant for 1,000 years that are waiting for the right opportunities to come back.
You just said you would have seed banks
Yeah.
in nature right now.
Yep.
That are dormant and can be for 1,000
Yep.
years just waiting for water.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. They found this, this was a while ago, but in the UK, because of global warming, the conditions were just right for this one flower to come back that they haven't seen for 1,000 years. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So, like I said, Mother Nature's like, listen, I'm here to work with you, but you got to know that this is a partnership. It's a collaboration.
Yes.
You can't just pillage my offerings and think that I'm going to be okay with that.
Yeah, there's an author named Rob Wolf that exemplifies that. He says he wrote the book Sacred Cow.
Yep.
And he says a crack team of NASA scientists couldn't, if they tried, design a more miraculous entity than the cow or bison. They convert sunlight, water, grass, and soil into highly nutritious, bioavailable protein and fat, even while nurturing and regenerating the very land they graze on. It's like just speaking to Mother Nature's undefeated.
Yeah,
That's
Rob's
it.
awesome. Yeah, and the Sacred Cow book was amazing. I will say, since that book came up, they wanted to prove that grass-fed beef was better for you than corn and grain finished. And they said by the end of the book, they couldn't. That the value of eating red meat was so good that even if you couldn't afford to or didn't like the taste of grass-fed beef, you should just eat beef anyway. I talked to a gentleman named Dr. Stefan Van Fleet, who's with the Utah State University, and he's connected with the Bionutrient Health Institute, and they are the ones that report I showed you that had the differences in meat. He works there, and even he's saying we're still finding data that actually shows that there is value, nutritional value, in corn and grain finished beef on some level. Where they're still trying to figure out is where that changes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there's still a lot of research being done around this. So I don't want to be so finite in saying that, but I did see it 75% in phytonutrients and essential non-amino acids, but there's still some questions being done around that. And Sacred Cow did a really great job in the defense of beef in general. I would love to know Rob's take on the new data, because that book came out before they had the data on regenerative beef. So I'd love to just get his, I'm sure he's looked into it, and I'd just be curious what they know. But yeah, that was a really great book.
I mean, when you're saying it, though, you're saying corn finished, right? Beef.
Yeah.
So it's finished. So the last part
Yeah.
of the life cycle is when you're feeding them
Yes.
that, right? So it's not like the entirety of the life.
Typically, yeah.
Because if it was, it probably would have changed that, right?
Yeah. I know producers that will do the best beef I've ever had in my life, flavor-wise, is out of southern Utah. Zion Premium Meats. Some of the characters we get to work with are amazing. This guy who owns this place, Bronco Billy Wright, look him up. 29-0 knockouts, heavyweight world champion.
Okay.
Dude's amazing. The most gentle giant. Like, he shakes your hand disappears.
Does it?
Yeah. But anyway, his operation, his Wagyu, like his hobby is to create the best tasting Wagyu ever. Right?
Yeah.
So you're buying, maybe there's some good value in nutrients. I don't know yet. Because a Wagyu is a different genetics. So the fat in Wagyu is higher in LDL or something like that. Linoleic acids and things like that. So there's value in that. I don't know. I'm not a scientist, so I don't know about the details, but his cows are born and raised in the feedlot next to the slaughterhouse they're processed in. He feeds them. They're not overcrowded, because he's really trying to cultivate something here. But I'll say in the beginning, I was like, I wasn't as friendly with others. I'm like, you're the devil, I'm coming after you. Now I'm we need you.
Yeah.
Let's play friendly for a while. We need you. But he's kind of looking into how stress impacts flavor and quality of beef. So because his animals are born and raised at the same place they're processed, they never experience stress ever. And I don't know if that's what made it so good, but what he feeds his cows are grain on the seed head. So it's not processed grain. It's just they cut it and roll it up, and that's what he feeds his cows.
Yeah.
But anyway, so there's so many different people, but corn and grain, typically what they'll do is they'll raise them until they're a certain age, 400 pounds, 500 pounds, somewhere around there. And then they get sold off to a feedlot, and the feedlot will finish them out. The reason that they'll do that is because they can put more weight on a cow faster. Guess what? It's no different than humans. If you eat all carbs,
Yep.
what's going to happen?
Yeah.
You're going to get fat.
You can get obese.
Right?
Yeah.
Cows are the same. It's the same thing happening to them. But they're trying to feed 320 million people. So how do we finish a cow in 18 months versus the normal 25 plus to grow naturally, right? So they'll take that cow at a certain weight, and sometimes they'll put them right on corn and grain. Sometimes somebody will buy them and finish them for a little longer on their own pasture and then finish them out. And then the regenerative folks, maybe not all, but most of them will just pasture finish and keep rotating them until they're grown. And so there's many different ways. Really, no matter what you like, there's something out there for you.
Yeah.
So,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
Mhm.
I wanted to ask you, what is in 10 years from now, if everything goes as planned, Trenches? We both know it's not going to, but if it does,
Yeah.
in this theoretical world, what does from the farm look like?
Yeah.
Who's it impacting?
Yeah.
What does it look like in 10 years?
Yeah.
from now?
10 years from the farm is adopted at the same level that Airbnb and Uber was. And so you have this platform that's completely committed to supporting the small family farm ranches and the consumers that work with them. It's an ecosystem. We have the sales platform that serves the producers, but then how many other things can we participate in to reshape the food supply chain the way it needs to be? And so we see a large ecosystem that is supporting our producers, that allows them to earn pretty much all of the revenue like we talked about earlier, so that they can hand it off the next generation, they can be successful, and so forth. So yeah, the easy answer is we're the Airbnb of food.
Yeah.
That's the easy answer.
And you're adopted
Yep.
everywhere.
Yep.
You're as common as anyone's using Amazon.
Yep.
That's
And we
awesome.
get messages from people that said we were stuck in a cubicle and now we're living life with our family out on the farm and making a living doing it. And consumers are telling us how much they've transformed their lives because they bought locally, and all of the things that would come from a program like this working.
It's an all-in-one solution.
Yeah.
Right? You're literally, so you're impacting climate change, you're supporting those individuals who are focus on regenerative agriculture. Maybe you're not, maybe you are, but regardless, you're there to support them. You're increasing the nutrient density of families and homes by shopping this. And at some point, it's going to be cheaper to do that than go to even the big box stores. So you're all in one solution. That's powerful. Let's say that you're going to be reaching 350 million, however many people live in the United States, 350 million eyeballs and ears. What would your message be?
I think my message would be, just from what we've experienced in our own home, that a lot of the turmoil, the inner turmoil, the inner family turmoil, they're all symptoms of a root cause, right? Or they're all symptoms of a root issue. I've observed that just like soil feeds the plant, feeds the animal, recycles carbon in the environment, and feeds human beings. Human health starts with our microgut biome. So you've got your soil health, that's the microbiology. In your body, you've got your microgut biome. Everything starts from there. Most people don't know that your gut is your first brain. Your microorganisms in your gut, if they're off, you're sick. Mental health, things that you wouldn't even associate to your gut health. I had a client once that her daughter, she was telling me about her daughter dying of a rare cancer. She was a champion volleyball player, never had any health issues at all. And this woman ran a hospital. And her daughter was at a volleyball practice and collapsed at practice. And That was a Monday, and by Friday she was dead. And she was telling me the story, and she was distraught, of course. And I'm like, gosh dang, how long ago is that? And so I asked her, I'm like, how long ago? And she said 7 years. And I was like, whoa, you just told that story like it was yesterday. Mm-hmm. So she was holding on to that. And I wasn't setting out to help her with that. I was setting out to help her. And we put her on a certain diet regimen for 30 days to clear out and see. No dairy, no milk. Or no dairy, no grain, right? The paleo kind of conversation. Let's just see if anything. So we did 30 days. She called me at the end of 30 days and she goes, AJ, I cleaned my daughter's room. And prior to that, she wouldn't let anybody go in there. It was just as she left it. And at first I was like, oh crap, too soon.
Yeah.
There's going to be some follow-up trauma we're going to have to work through. Like regret, but no, it was healed, done. She was over it. So her gut was affecting her psychology around her daughter that was 7 years ago. And then spiritual health. Spiritual health, in my opinion, and the way I see it, the word is the soil. Starts with the word of God, the word of I'll use God, but you plug that in with whatever God you pray to. But it starts with the word that feeds the microbiology of your spirit, let's say. And then that manifests itself that way. God works in threes, right? You got your body, you got your environment, and you got your spirit. And so the message to the American people is, if you're suffering, if you're struggling, this may sound so simple, but if you start with the food is your direct connection to Mother Earth. The nutrients that are in that food came from Mother Earth, which came from the creation of God. And when you put that into your body, things in your life will get better. Things you didn't even know that were being caused by that. I know it sounds foo-foo, but I've seen it happen over and over again. So that's on the individual side. For our communities, we have to. People just need to understand that we are in such a terrible position, but there's hope. There's something we can do about it. Like you were saying, voting with your dollar actually makes a difference. Fake meat went belly up because we said we don't want it. But you know what? If you say, I want this, and you put your money there, it will be in abundance. You will have farmers and ranchers providing. You'll have the new generation coming in, first generation producers that can come in and provide for you and your family, so that all of those things that you're working on that matter to you, that, your sports, your family life, your business, all of those things can go forward because we've taken care of the thing that matters the most. And it goes back to the soil and the farmers who manage the soil and the environment. It's so weird. I'm a crunchy conservative now, I guess, because I stole that from Thomas Massey, because I never thought I would be connecting all of these like I am, but we are nature. Yeah. And the further we remove ourselves from nature, the further we can see the de-evolution of human beings. So reconnecting with our roots, going right to the soil. When you eat that food from the soil, there are micronutrients in there that came from the microorganisms that fed your body, that feed your spirit, that feed the earth again. Yeah. It's all important. It's all connected. So my invitation is for people to do the hard thing. There's a lot of people right now doing the hard things. And the other thing I would say is, if this is a concern for you at all, you need to get into action. I have met so many people that were woken up by COVID on our food supply chain specifically and went to work. They built slaughterhouses. They bought ranches. They held cows back, and they're closing. They can't survive because they saw the problem and went to work fast, but the American people are not hearing and adopting that fast enough. So we need your help. You guys have the direct effect on whether this works or not. If 60 harvests scare you, you can do something about it. If you don't, we sleep in the bed we make. And, that's why it's crucial that we all learn how to shake the hand that feeds us. That's our slogan. Shake the hand that feeds you. It's simple. It's straightforward. There's so much behind that. There's so much power and meaning behind shaking the hand that feeds you that we just leave it simple. And typically when we share that, people just are like, that's great, because it unleashes this whole idea of what that looks like. So there's a lot of people out here trying to help, and we just need to be rallied. We on the break there, you mentioned the Oregon dairy farmers, and then the Idaho water curtailments. The Oregon dairy farmers, just kind of to wrap this up, the overlord policymakers were trying to force small dairies, meaning if you have one cow, you need to improve the land that you're milking that cow on to the same level that the large dairies are. That would have wiped out anybody with a cow. Wouldn't make sense to put in $50,000 of infrastructure for me to milk one cow. That message got out on social media and the people rallied. And it was the people that got it to stop. My family, the Bundy Ranchers, took on the federal government. They had backing, but they didn't have the same social media reach that they do nowadays. And they were persecuted heavily, including one of theirs people being killed during this whole thing. If you're a listener and you know something about that, about what they went through, you're going to hear people on both sides. But the reality is they came out on top legally both times, which means they were right. But they didn't have the same level of support from the American people that we have nowadays because of social media. So your voice matters, your dollars matter, and how you spend those dollars matter to your family.
I think it's important to understand that, like, if we adapt to this way of living, right, that you're mentioning, farm to table, regenerative, leaving the earth better than we found it, leaving nature, and I use the word nature interchangeably with God, right? Like leaving God's creations better than we found it.
Yep.
You're talking about adapting to thrive, and that's what I'm super. That's why I exist. Is like, I don't want you to adapt for the sake of adaptation. I want you to adapt to thrive. I want we need leaders in place so you can inspire individuals. And for me personally, hearing your conviction in this fight and this hill that you're willing to die on, and all of the different problems that exist that your product and what you're building is solving, that's inspiring. And you are inspiring millions and will inspire millions of people, hopefully tens of millions, hopefully hundreds of millions of people. And then lastly, man, the persistence, like, we need to persist to succeed. We don't want to persist to just get by. We need to succeed. And so you've got all the skin in the game now. You've mentioned now publicly multiple times you're not selling.
Yep.
Like you are in
I'm
this.
in it.
You're in it. And I'm just grateful that there's people out there doing what you're doing. What's the website? And then is there an app that's coming out?
Yeah, so the website is fromthefarm.org.
Okay, fromthefarm.org.
Yep, and we originally had it planned to be an app. Apps are more expensive than web-based, but it is developed to be an app in the future if that's the route we decide to go.
Okay.
So fromthefarm.org, customers go on there. You can build a profile. We built it where you can shop multiple farms at one and check out one time, so that you get some of the same conveniences of shopping at the grocery store. But we're building a community. So come on board. Even if you don't buy yet, join us. Help us spread the message. Whatever's going on that has you not buy right away, that's okay. But just help us spread this message, because we cannot do this alone. We can't outspend the existing system dollar for dollar. It has to be collaboration. That's why we call this campaign the Feed the People, Buy the People campaign. That's what it's about. We have to do this together, and how you spend your money is what helps.
We're going to get this episode out before Black Friday. So
yes,
my only ask for you guys is if you guys allocate a little bit of the expenditure you're going to be putting towards whatever doohickey and whatever you're going to be buying that you don't need on Black Friday, go buy some meat. And I've already been on the website. I'm already looking for the next, my local farmer that I'm going to be purchasing from. But allocate a little bit of that. That's my only ask to the audience.
Yeah, thank you.
But anyways, thanks for tuning into another episode of the Adaptive Leaders Podcast. Guys, go check out AJ and any of his social medias. One more, where can they find you on social?
So my personal is _J_Richards, and then our Instagram for the business is From the Farm USA.
Boom. Go follow him. Go like this episode, share this episode, subscribe to the show if we brought you any value. Thank you for your attention and thanks for your awareness. See you guys. Peace.